Hi, it's Elizabeth with the Weekly Tasting. Thanks so much for getting this Big Bold Reds pack. Now look, each of these wines is fantastic. We know that not all reds are big and bold and heavy, but guess what? When you want mouth-filling, body-warming, bold wines, look no further than these four, which are going to satisfy your craving for a substantial red. Each wine in this pack has a richness, and they are big, but they are not over the top. They still have excellent balance. They're going to go well with food or without food. And they've got power, but still subtlety. So they are going to be extra fantastic if you decant them for about 20 minutes before you taste them. You can just pour them in the glass and leave them for 20 minutes. That will really give you a lot more pleasure out of these wines. There's 3 standbys and 1 twist in this pack. We have a Vista Cama Reserva Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina, 2014. This wine is juicy, it's plummy, spicy, it's got a really long finish. It's impossible not to love this wine. Then we hop over the mountains, the Andes Mountains, and we go to a Syrah from the San Antonio Valley of Chile. This is the Corralillo. This wine is really interesting. It's from a cooler climate region, but you still get really intense fruit here. Lots of black plum, blackberry notes, and also some spiciness, some leathery notes. Really fantastic, and it's really great with food or alone. The Scott Harvey Amador Valley Zinfandel, the Mountain Selection. If you have not had a Zinfandel from Amador County, this may be your new favorite Zinfandel. It's big, it's bold, and yet it still has this herbal quality to it. It's a little bit different from some of the other Zins from California. Very well balanced and awesome wine. And then finally, my twist for you, a Beaujolais, the Laurent Gaultier Beaujolais Grand Cru. And this wine is awesome. It's a 2016, and although I keep saying over and over again on the Wine for Normal People podcast and here and everywhere else, Beaujolais, it's a light to medium bodied wine. It's really great with food. Well, guess what? In 2 regions of Beaujolais, it makes powerful, really kind of almost meaty wines, and this is one of them. What you're going to find is that maybe the wine smells like a regular Beaujolais, but once you taste it, it's got power, it's got tannin that builds, and it's going to be very surprising to you. It definitely fits in this pack with the other wines. So with that, that's your intro. Make sure you decant these wines, and let's get to tasting. When we're thinking about big, bold reds, what we really want are things that are growing in warmer climates, because that's how you get ripe grapes. You get kind of higher alcohol levels that are going to make the wine feel more cheek coating and big and full and rich. So it shouldn't be any surprise that we have one wine from one side of the Andes Mountains and one from the other. This wine is the Natitec Corralillo Syrah, and this is from the San Antonio Valley of Chile. I've been so impressed by Chile for the last couple of years. There's so much interesting stuff coming around, and this wine is really an example of that, because previously all they had really been importing was Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay, Cab blends, Carmenere, and Sauvignon Blanc, and now there's really interesting things like this Syrah coming out of the San Antonio Valley, which is just west of the capital city of Santiago. Now here, it's pretty interesting because even though this wine is from 33 degrees latitude south, which is really at the very upper reaches of where you could grow grapes, it's not hot here. This is actually a cool climate region because of the Pacific Ocean. And it's got gaps in the mountains and the coastal ranges that are going to allow that Humboldt current air, that really cold air coming in from the Pacific Ocean, to give this area some mist, to give it fog, to cool it down. And so as a result, you have these cool ocean winds that make this a moderate climate, which is what Syrah needs to thrive. It's really interesting. You have a long, cooler growing season, but you still get rich fruit and the flavors, but you have acidity, you have good tannin, and you have complexity. So let's take a look at this wine. Very dark, like almost all of these wines are all going to be really dark in color because that sun is bringing out that pigment. This is a dark ruby, cannot see your fingers through it, stains the glass, and we'll give it a sniff. So it's really aromatic. You get a ton of black plum and black currant. There's some earth, it's peppery, you have this leathery horse saddle note that's very typical of Syrah. And it's just intense fruit. I mean, the wine is really, really bold. It has noticeable but not overpowering tannin, a little bit of coffee to it. smooth cheek coating texture and a really long finish, great with or without food. Cured salty meats like prosciutto. You could have this with falafel. You could have it with lamb with Moroccan spices, pretty much anything with Moroccan spices or those warmer spices. Grilled red meat. This is a fantastic example of new wines coming out of Chile, and it is big, bold, and delicious. I'm certainly not going to do a big, bold red wines pack without giving you something from California, especially from a warm region, and especially not a Zin, which is really the classic grape, in my opinion, for bold red wine lovers. This one is the Scott Harvey Mountain Selection 2013. It's from Amador County, which is far inland from the north coast areas of Napa and Sonoma. It is this hilly, hot area during the day at least, and it creates these outstanding Zinfandels, one of my favorite places for Zinfandel in California. It's really sunny and bright during the day. You get strong sun, but then, and that's gonna ripen the fruit and make it plush and lush, but then at night it cools down like a lot of these places, and then you still have acidity and you've got great structure in the wine. So this is with Dry Creek Valley and Mendocino, both on the north coast of California, one of my most favorite areas for Zinfandel. Amador County Zinfandels are balanced, they're interesting. I think you might find a new favorite Zinfandel region if you like this wine, because this is pretty typical. Let's take a look at the color. Zinfandel isn't always like the heaviest pigmented grapes, so this is a garnet, sort of light brownish color, not super dark, and we'll give it a swirl and a sniff. Prune, dried cherry, vanilla, dark flowers. You get a little bit of juniper berry. Some gins actually smell like juniper berry. You may find that in this wine. I certainly did. Let's take a taste. It is just a red wine to love. Prune and plum and herbs. Kind of softer tannin, that mouth-filling quality, that 14.5% alcohol is really acting there to give it a smooth mouth feel. Just a fantastic balance, kind of lower on the acidity. It's just perfect for this pack. It's also going to be perfect with burgers. You can have it with pizza, ribeye steak, black bean soup, beef stew. This is an awesome wine. You might just want to drink it alone, although make sure you have water with it. It's kind of high in alcohol, but such an awesome, awesome big bold red. So Malbec can range from really heavy to medium bodied, and this one is kind of right in between. It's sort of a medium plus body, I guess. It's a Vista Cama Malbec from Mendoza, Argentina. It's vintage 2014. Now, Mendoza is in the foothills of the Andes Mountains, which are very high mountains in Argentina and in Chile. And here you have very high elevation. So the vineyards here get very direct sun, and that means that the grapes are gonna gather a lot of pigment, they're gonna get nice ripeness over a long growing season, and they are going to have riper tannin, so that mouth drying sensation won't be quite as pronounced. However, there are temperature diurnals. So during the day, it's pretty warm, and at night it gets cold. If you've ever been out hiking or stayed in the mountains before, you know it gets really cool at night, and that's great for grapes because that means that they can retain their acidity and have really lovely structure. So we have elevation, we have great temperature diurnals, we have really fantastic soils here. We have a clone of the Malbec grape that is just outstanding, creates these juicy, flavorful wines. This is the gold standard. The Vista Cama Reserva is fantastic. Let's take a look. You can see the result of all of that sun here. Lots of pigment, a little bit of staining in the tears and on the glass. It's kind of a red purple. Give it a swirl and a sniff. Plums and dark cherry. And then this is a Reserva. It spent a little bit more time in oak than a regular Malbec. So what you get here are some oak notes, black pepper, nutmeg, cinnamon, vanilla. Let's taste. Tastes very similar to the aroma. It's got this nutmeg and plum note, and the texture is just so lovely. There's this interplay between kind of soft tannin, good mouth-watering acidity, and this nice mouth-coating texture from the alcohol. You're gonna be so happy with this. It has a really long finish. It'll stay around forever, which is so tasty. I don't know why you wouldn't want it to. Mushrooms, steak, burgers, lentils will be perfect with this lovely big bold red. I'm telling you right now, Morgon, this wine is the Laurent Gauthier Grand Cross Morgon 2016. And Morgon is one of those 10 cru, one of those top growing areas of Beaujolais that grows the Gamay grape in special soils. Here it happens to be granite, which has some clay soils over it, heavier soils, some schist. And what you get here are wines that have a depth of flavor, more tannin, extra ripeness. This is unlike other Beaujolais. There's two areas, Morgon and Moulin-à-Vent, that create these powerful Gamay wines, and this is what you're gonna find here. So let's take a look at it. Right away from the color, you're gonna see that this is very dark. You cannot see your fingers through the wine. It's almost a purple color. It's certainly a dark, dark red, and we'll give it a swirl and a sniff. You get dark cherry, red cherry, blackberry, a little bit of earth, violet, rose petals. So the Gamay notes are still there. The violet note is pretty strong, but let's taste. And this is where the power is. It tastes like it smells. You get those violet notes, but the texture, it's going to be so intense. The tannins are going to build with each sip. You get a smooth mouth coating texture. The alcohol is not high, but you still get that. This is a very strong wine. It's going to linger on the finish. And what you're going to find is that you're definitely going to want to have this with food. This is not your standard sipping Beaujolais. This is going to be great with steak or with lamb and a red wine sauce, beef bourguignon, or grilled portobello mushrooms. This is a wine that needs food, but it is certainly bold and can stand up to heavier wines. So hopefully you'll agree with me that it belongs in the big bold red wine pack. I certainly think it does. The finish is lingering, and it certainly is big and bold to me, and a twist on what growing region can do to change a wine completely and make it either light and luscious or big and bold. I hope you found these big, bold red wines interesting and very well balanced. They're not over the top, but they all each are bold in their own way and super delicious. I hope you'll check back on Mondays for the next available pack and give us feedback on these wines.